Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the Marvel Cinematic Universe comes one of the most popular superhero franchises of all time, featuring a ragtag group of unlikely allies who band together in an effort to stop a madman from destroying the universe with a weapon of unimaginable power. We're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy was directed by James Gunn from a story co-written with Nicole Perlman. It was initially released on July 21, 2014, and was distributed by Walt Disney Pictures. The film is an adaptation of comic books released by Marvel Comics, with the original Guardians debuting in Marvel Superheroes number 18, published in January of 1969. Guardians of the Galaxy is the first MCU film to take place in outer space, and focuses on Peter Quill, also known as Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax the Destroyer, Rocket Raccoon, and Groot. The quintet is thrown together after Star-Lord's theft of a mysterious orb which, unbeknownst to the team, contains an Infinity Stone. After the five successfully escape imprisonment, they find themselves on the run from the Ravagers, an organization of thieves who took Quill from Earth as a small child and raised him as one of their own. The team also discover that Ronan, a radical renegade from an alien race known as the Kree, is after the stone and the power it possesses. It's up to the Guardians to find a way to not only coexist, but to also fight to stay alive while trying to save the galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy was a box office smash, earning nearly $774 million on a budget of almost $196 million. The film was also a hit with critics, many of whom praised it for its comic undertones and action-packed story. The film spawned two sequels, Volume 2 in 2017 and Volume 3 in 2023. Thanks to the cast, the humor, and the heart, Guardians of the Galaxy remains a wildly popular franchise which continues to be a standout of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's the lowdown on Guardians of the Galaxy. A lot has been said about Guardians of the Galaxy, the original film we're talking about here today, kids, 2014. A lot's been said about this brand, about this particular MCU/Marvel Comics property in regards to the films. And at the time, we'll get into this, but at the time it was all about, oh, what's this? Non-traditional comic book fans didn't know who this was, didn't know very much, if at all, anything about it. And much of the conversation at that time, because it wasn't too long ago, much of the conversation at that time was basically centered on, man, this may not work. It's so funny how, as we record this, it's 2021. We see now what this property has become, what it means to fans, how over, to borrow a pro wrestling term that the Stars became, how popular and how famous this is all become in the world of the MCU, and how Guardians now, you can't really envision the MCU without the Guardians. Their chapters are extremely important, or maybe we should say their volumes. But dude, it's funny, Phil, looking back at this, because I know you and I both watched it again very recently, the past day or so. Man, I kind of forgot just how much, and dude, if I say on a limb, it's going to make it sound like, oh, well, they were shooting in the dark, man. We're going to wait and see how this thing pans out. Like, I'm sure they had every confidence in the world in it because they knew the cast they had assembled. They knew they had a good story, and the production obviously was going to be there because it's MCU. And the director and all that great stuff that's working hand in hand for this. But it kind of felt to me like, man, I don't know if this is going to work, but it seems like that they had full confidence in it. When 2014's happening and you know that they're going to move forward with Guardians, what was your first response to Guardians going to become part of the MCU?
I was super excited as a big fan of Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
And if you told me, about a decade ago that we would get a Rocket on film, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, he's an action figure / plush doll waiting to happen. It just seems like one of those things where, well, we got to make toys off this movie. We got to figure out how to make toys off of it. So, yeah, and he is one of the central points of this film, and we got a lot to dive into here with this movie. But Rocket in a lot of ways makes this thing work. The combination of Rocket and Groot. So when they move forward with this, a lot of the conversation I was hearing on my end, as I said before, was, is this going to work? Is it going to flop? Did you have any concerns about whether or not the MCU is like a mainstream movie going audience was going to actually accept this, or were they going to turn their nose up at it?
Yeah, I don't. I felt like Rocket is a great character when he came out, and I feel like Groot is another one of those characters where he's great. It's such a good cast of characters that in the right hands that I knew that it could be special. But man, you have to give all the credit in the world to James Gunn because he turned this into a massive hit. Like I feel
Mhm.
like maybe somebody else could have took these same characters and done something that was as endearing, but I think he deserves a lot of the credit in making this into, a runaway hit.
Yeah. Um, James Gunn, the director, kids of this movie and of part two, and what we assume is going to be part three. That we know it's on the books and it's going to happen. So we'll see how all that plays out. But yeah, he's another key figure in this, and not even in the film, not even a character, but yeah, behind the scenes, a lot of what he brings to the table helps make this movie work. I'm not going to sit here and say that I thought it was going to flop. I'm not going to sit here and say that I thought it was a bad move. I did have some questions at the time as to, man, is this the right move? Is this the right call? It seemed so far out of the realm. Dude, correct me if I'm wrong, but up until this point, the MCU had not really went cosmic. They hadn't really. I mean, the Avengers had happened, right? So we had seen the invading Chitauri forces, but we'd never went off world in the MCU, had we, to this point?
No, that's the other thing that's kind of great about this movie. I feel like it was the first of its kind in a lot of ways. Because it was the first Marvel movie that did the off world stuff, and it did the world building in a way that, I mean, when you really think about it, this was the first time that we saw Thanos outside of the cutscene right after Avengers,
Yeah.
and this was the first time we saw Thanos interact with other characters.
Yeah, that's a heavy moment, man. Because like you said before, we'd only seen him like his profile. We'd seen him. What post credits movie was it where he puts the gauntlet on for the first time?
Age of Ultron, I think.
I think that's right. Yeah.
We were talking about when he goes in there and he says, "I'll do it myself."
Yes. Yes.
I think it's Age of Ultron.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And yeah, he's the heavy of the Infinity Saga for sure. The big bad. So as you said, the cast is what makes this movie work. I completely agree with that. Yes, I had doubts about whether or not this was going to click to begin with. Let me hit you with this before we go any further. Let's say that this movie had not clicked. Let's say that the story was the acting was for what it was okay. The effects would have been amazing, I'm sure either way. If this movie doesn't work, what's that do to the MCU at that time? Does that knock everybody back on their heels? Do they get past it eventually? I mean, what happens had this movie tanks?
Uh, I don't know, because I mean, I think that because I feel like in some ways, Captain America is an easy sell,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Some of the more grounded superheroes are an easy sell. Um, it's kind of harder to sell a mainstream audience on a talking raccoon and a talking tree,
right,
and this intergalactic uh, kind of like space pirates team.
right.
um, so I think if it failed, it would have been harder to get people to get into some of the more lofty stuff, like
Mm.
more of the Infinity Gauntlet stuff, and some of the more esoteric might not be the right word, but some of the more out there concepts that they introduced later.
And dude, this movie lays the groundwork for Captain Marvel for sure. um, because we see the Kree, we see Xandar, and we see the Nova Corps and all this stuff coming into play later down the road. And it's so funny, man, because watching this film again for the first time in a while, I can't help but think of part two, and I can't help but think of Endgame for a lot of different reasons. But like watching this movie with the knowledge of what happens after kind of changes how I watch this movie, if I'm being honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely think when you look at how it's aged, um, and everything is set up, it seems even more special now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Talking about the cast, we got to dive into this. First and foremost is Peter Quill slash Star Lord. Star Lord. It's great. Chris Pratt, who's awesome. Zoe Saldana as Gamora. Vin Diesel as Groot, just the voice, kids, obviously. Bradley Cooper as Rocket, again, just the voice. And Dave Bautista as Drax. That is your big five, as it were. And dude, with again, man, we've talked a lot on the 6M about what a different movie it would be if so and so was not cast in certain roles. This is like the best starting five that you could hope to get, in my opinion, for this movie. I think this cast gels so well together, and just looking at the actors individually, you're kind of like they're going to be together, but like, dude, it completely works. Like you just there's chemistry with these five almost from the jump, man.
Yeah, man, I don't. Again, we give like I said, you gotta give James Gunn his credit, but I think you got to give the cast credit for committing to this, and the chemistry that they had together is just a big part of why this movie works. I
Mhm.
mean, you probably could have thrown any voice behind Rocket, but I think Bradley Cooper just did such a fantastic job with the role that I couldn't envision anybody else being his voice at this point.
Could you have picked that voice out of a lineup had you not been told it was him?
No,
Yeah.
no, because it doesn't sound like it's just Bradley Cooper doing his voice. He's doing some kind of accent with it. He's doing something
Right.
with it that I can't quite put my finger on, but it works. It just does.
Yeah, it's so good. It's like he always sounds like a wisecracking cab driver in New York to me. That's what he sounds like.
Yeah.
Just a smart mouth cab driver. Um, dude, as wrestling guys, we knew this was Batista's. Was this Batista's first big thing, or had he done something before this?
I'm not sure. I don't think this is his debut. I think he's done other acting, but this is clearly going to be his claim to fame when all said and done.
Yeah, yeah. This is man, and at the time, I don't know if we knew what to expect, but this is the perfect character for him because much in the same way that John Cena is capable of self-deprecating humor, and that's the kind of roles that he gets, is sort of the muscled up guy that's not dumb, but he's sort of, maybe a few bricks shy of a load, I guess. But those characters work because he's very self-deprecating. You put Batista in a role similar to this, but instead of it, he's an idiot. He just has no sense of what metaphors are. He doesn't know what that means. So it makes him sound like a buffoon. He's really not, but it's the way he phrases, like the things that he says in the movie are so freaking awesome and hilarious. But dude, I don't know. Insert randomly well built actor here in this slot, and I guess you get okay, but I just can't imagine anybody else doing Drax better than Batista does.
Yeah, man, he just does the dry humor so well. He just does because I mean, straight away, Drax was going to be an interesting part of this team because you have all these other guys that are just wacky, and Drax is kind of like a straightforward kind of like meathead killer character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was always going to be interesting to see how he played off of them and to have him be this super literal um kind of idiot savant of the team.
Right.
It just works.
Yeah. What I've been anxious to see in the MCU, by the way, is to see one of someone else from Drax's race. And we've never seen anybody, have we?
No, I don't think we have.
That'd be awesome. Just to hear a conversation between those two and the other person be exactly like him where they don't get metaphors at all. That would be hilarious to me.
No, nothing goes over my head. I would catch it.
I would catch it. And then Gamora delivers a line like I'm gonna die surrounded by a bunch of like the biggest idiots in the galaxy. It's awesome. Uh, Zoe Saldana is Gamora. Okay, so tell me why how is Gamora as important to the Guardians team as Black Widow is to the Avengers? Is it two different dynamics, or is there some similarities happening here?
I think it's two different dynamics because in many ways, Gamora is technically the most skilled member of the team in terms of hand to
Mm,
hand fighting.
yeah.
I feel like in a fight, you're taking either Drax or Gamora, and I feel like if I had to pick either of the two, I'm picking Gamora. She's probably a better fighter than Drax.
Ooh, yeah, good call. Because she thinks she's Drax just kind of kicks some punches, which is a whole other commentary on Batista as a wrestler, but we won't get into it. Uh,
He just kind of runs and stabs things
yeah,
and
yeah.
punches things hard. Gamora is like a skilled hand to hand fighter. I mean, trained and perfected under Thanos. Like she is like like she's the most deadly assassin in the universe for a reason.
But I'll throw this at you. Much in the same way as Black Widow, though, she's looking for a family dynamic, whether she knows it or not, and she gets one with Guardians.
Oh yeah, that's very true. I think her getting a second chance and a second lease on life after a big part of her life was stolen from her when she was a kid.
Yeah.
That is actually a really good parallel.
Um, Vin Diesel is Groot, and we'll circle back to Gamora here shortly. Vin Diesel is Groot. I I'm not going to crap on this because I'm fine with it, but it's not to me. It's not one of those things, and I'm sure it's because all he says is three words. But to me, in my head, this is not as big of a deal as some other voice casting is in this movie. Like this could have been John Cleese. This could have been I don't know Stallone. This could have been I don't know anybody. Honestly, and I think it would have been fine. Do you think that Vin Diesel's voice here has like does it command your attention because of his voice? Like I kind of feel like his voice is lost in this just a little bit. I mean, what do you think about it?
Um, well, I mean, if you watch like the making of it and you see him do all the takes of him saying "I am Groot," and it's clearly not just him saying it one time and then just redubbing it. He actually is saying "I am Groot" and having to emote and say it in different time in different scenes
Right.
in different ways. And I got to give him credit because that's a challenge as an actor to have to act and only be able to say three words.
Well, again, there's a side commentary we could get into about Vin Diesel as an actor, uh, but I won't get into it. I'm
It
just,
depends on what you see him. He's done some things where he's a great actor, but his
whew.
his meat and his meat and butter at this point is the Fast franchise and all these kind of like action movies where he doesn't have to do too much.
Yeah. I took my kid to see Hobbs and Shaw because he really wanted to go see it. I said fine, but I don't know that I've ever took him to a fast movie because I'm like, I can't sit through this. There's cars in space. What's going on here? Come on. So, yeah, it's hard. Um, of course, yeah, everyone realizes I say these things about Vin Diesel as he's a safe distance from me because I don't care to get trashed. Um, Ronan the Accuser. Let me say this about Lee Pace. We did not get enough of Lee Pace in the MCU. I think he's one of the most visually appealing villains. Striking. It's very simplistic in his appearance, but this guy flat out looks like a warrior. He looks like there's the scene where you see him for the first time in the movie, and they're painting his face, they're dusting him down, whatever it is they're doing to him, and they're putting his battle gear on him. Looks like he's getting ready to go into the battlefield and kill an army of soldiers barehanded. Like I kind of wish that he had not died in this film, so we could have got him later. I mean, we got a glimpse of him after this in other movies, but for my money, not enough. What's your take on Lee Pace as Ronan the Accuser?
Um, yeah, he's another one where he is just everything is just deadpan serious,
Yeah.
and it's just such a contrast from the rest of the movie. And I think because of that, he stands out in a good way. And then for some people that don't understand that contrast, they're like, he doesn't fit. He's a
What?
boring villain. And I don't think it's that he was boring. I just think there's so much subtext to him that it's missed. Like when I watched it this time, I completely forgot. Um, when we first see him, they're draining out that pool that he's in, and he comes out and he's like surrounded on this dark liquid. And I didn't put two and two together till maybe the second or third time that I watched it that he was bathing in Cree blood.
Oh, shut up.
Because when he nails the guy with the hammer that he was interrogating, the blood from the guy is pouring down back into that pool.
Oh, I can't say that I put two and two together, to be honest with you. That's crazy. Yeah. He's a zealot. It's kind of mild way of putting it, a zealot and a war criminal. Um, and the deal is that Thanos is like, look, go get this thing from me. And we don't know what the thing is. The whole movie is about getting this orb. And this was not our first exposure to an Infinity Stone. We had already seen one in Captain America. We knew about it in the Avengers of the Tesseract, but we didn't know about this one until this movie. And the Soul Stone is the one in question in this movie. So yeah, um, dude, I didn't realize there was like crap being thrown against Ronan. I love the villain. I thought it was perfect. I thought the tone of this was perfect. I don't know if you can do a Thanos in Guardians because I feel like he would overshadow the cast that you're trying to put together for the first time here, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Um, there's a lot of great things to be said about Michael Rooker and basically everything he's ever done because he's amazing. Um, and it's hard to think about Michael Rooker without thinking, I'm Mary Poppins, y'all, which is not this movie. It's the second one. But dude, Yondu Udonta, who again, as a kid, if you'd said, "Hey Tom," like with you, it's Rocket, but like, "Hey Tom, they're going to make a movie, and Yondu's going to be in it." I'm like, "What? What? How?" It's great. He's great. He's basically Michael Rooker with blue skin and a mohawk. That's what this character is. It's like giving a role to Matthew McConaughey or to Keanu Reeves. Not every role, but sometimes it'd be like, "Hey, we wrote this, and we're just going to let you be you." So basically, he's just himself in this movie, and it's freaking great, dude. I love him.
Yeah, he's really great in this movie. I the thing that I enjoy about his character here is again, you can take somebody like Yandu, where his character is pretty straightforward in the comics, but you add so much by making him like this, like this backwoods, like southern redneck esque character,
Yeah.
and it just adds so much to the character. And so when he does actually like show what he can do with the arrow, it's like, oh no, this guy's a badass, and he's just so unassuming before that because you think he's just all talk. And if I could say anything about this movie, and just what James Gunn managed to do with this movie is, I feel like he was just kind of like a master of timing and payoffs in this movie. Like he'd set up something and he'd give you the payoff, and the payoff is just so good
Mhm.
that it makes the movie that much better.
Yeah, no kidding. And unlike other Marvel films, which we've talked about here before, we don't get a sympathetic villain with Ronan. Ronan's pretty much pretty awful in the beginning, the middle, and the end. He stays awful until he meets his demise. You can maybe put forth the case that Yondu was kind of a bad guy. And then maybe he came around toward the end, or maybe you can make that case more for part two, perhaps. But I feel like we kind of got that. He sort of did a 180 in regards to Peter by the end of this film.
Yeah, I I think that for the most part, the main cast aren't really good guys.
Right.
they're all kind of they all kind of make a babyface turn um towards the middle of the movie, and I feel like Yandu is just an extension of the Guardians. A kind of he's kind of a member of the team without being a member of the team,
Yeah.
and so he kind of goes through the same face turn as they do.
Yeah. God, this is making me want to do the part two. We're going to have to do the part two at some point because that'll be fun. Because like now I'm wanting to go see part two again. Um, because in that movie they referenced Yondu doing this before as a Ravager with Stallone's character, and they had a falling out and all this other stuff happened, and then we get Stallone's version of the Guardians, which we don't really get to see ever in action. Maybe one of these days we will. Karen Gillian is Nebula, who again, dude, you use the word deadpan a couple of times. She's so deadpan, it's crazy, but it completely fits what she needs to be. She's not supposed to be excitable. She's not emotional. This is not the best we're going to see Nebula either. I think the best we saw Nebula was Endgame, honestly, where we really got to see her. Um, Infinity War / Endgame, I would say maybe, with her sort of spending all that time with Tony in space, and it looks like it's over, and her humanity's starting to come out finally. But in this movie, she's got a big axe to grind against her sister, and she hates her life, and she's been tortured her whole life. And man, Karen Gillian is great in this role as Nebula.
Yeah, I you gotta give her a lot of credit because a lot of her delivery is supposed to be intentionally robotic and monotone, but she adds so much character and so much kind of sass to it without, raising her voice a lot. And it's always like it always stays in kind of that same range, but it has all this it has all this character to it. Like the thing I always think about of her is when she jumps out of the ship and she cuts her hand off to fall, and then she lands on that other ship and she smashes the window, and she's just like, "Get out!"
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. That's a great scene. Of this role, Gillian said that she'd researched ancient Spartans, shaved off her hair for the role, and trained for 2 months.
It's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, dude, that's commitment. That's commitment to a character that's never been on screen in the MCU. That again, dude, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to my original premise that this thing could have been a train wreck. It doesn't look like it should work. I mean, when you see it, you're like, God, not only was that funny, it's charming and it's got heart. And dude, it'll grab you. It'll grab you by the heartstrings in moments when you least expect it. A grown man is petting the head of a character that's not real and not even there. And when he does it, you're like, oh my God, I think I'm going to cry. That's amazing. But again, dude, on paper, if you read the outline, you're like, what? This is never going to work. With comic book audience, it probably would, but with a mainstream audience, no chance. But like, thanks to performances like Karen Gilliam, again, putting all of herself into it, it works on every level. It's insane that this movie works. I don't know. I can't keep going. I mean, can't stop going back to that, I should say. See, what about and I'm gonna butcher his name as sure as I'm sitting here. Demon Honsau maybe as Korath. Um,
Yeah,
I love this guy, dude.
he's one of those actors where I think he just has such an aura to him,
Yeah,
and he just has this aura to everything he's done. And I've seen him do serious things. I've seen him do comedy, and he just kind of brings this. He brings this aura to it. Everything he does, and it's the same thing here when he shows up on scene. I mean, you got to give these actors a lot of credit because they're getting dressed up in some of these ridiculous outfits and costumes, and they're committing, and they're making it into something you should take serious. And I feel like he's definitely one of these. He got like the machinery all in the sides of his heads, but at the same time, you take him seriously because of who he is as an actor.
yeah. And dude, he's so great in the What If when T'Challa became Star Lord. That is the best thing ever. Just the voice acting in that by him is phenomenal.
Yeah, and oh, you talk about thinking about the what if with T'Challa as Star Lord and watching the movie again,
Yeah.
watching the first movie again, and really understanding what makes Star Lord special and what makes Peter Quill special and what makes T'Challa special for distinct reasons.
Yeah, you're right. The what if is amazing, and at the end of them, going, this is a much better outcome. Like this is great, and I submit that it was the one of the best outcomes I've seen in anything Marvel's done. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. But yeah, you're right. The reason that T'Challa works as Black Panther and Peter works as Star Lord is for so many reasons that if you try to list them all, you'd be here all day. But like nuance is a big word, I know, and it's very important for Peter, especially. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know how much credit Chris Pratt gets for this because depending on what opinion you have, is he delivering an Oscar worthy performance? I don't know. He's kind of a jokester. He's kind of a ham. He's kind of self absorbed. But man, there's a lot of stuff he does in this movie. Reactions, facials, the way he squints his eyes. There's certain things he does that without knowing it, when he does it, you're like, oh, I felt that. I know what that means. Like, that's good stuff, dude. I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
I don't think he does either because he is for a lot of fans their least favorite Chris.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
uh, but I would submit to a lot of people that Guardians doesn't work without Chris Pratt.
Yep.
He is the star of this movie. He is the heart and soul of this movie in a lot of ways. The his emotional beats are the anchor of this movie that kind
Yeah.
of ground it. His speech, all of his heroic moments are what makes this movie so heartwarming.
Yeah, this could not be a Tom Cruise. This could not be a Brad Pitt. It just couldn't be. They would probably be fine, but dude, the character of Peter Quill has to have quirkiness. He has to be. I mean, plus not for nothing, this guy wasn't raised by humans on Earth, so
Yeah, he's kind of a big kid. He's never really had to be an adult. We're
true.
watching basically Tom Hanks and Big as a space pirate.
Yeah, yeah, good call. Good call. Um, John C. Riley as Roman Day, I think is how you pronounce it. Um, he's just John Riley being John Riley. He just shows up. It's just like go to wardrobe, John. They'll suit you up. No makeup, no hair, no nothing, no different skin. He's just John Riley in a movie. But dude, it's one of those stupid cliches. Oh, she could sing the phone book and win a Grammy. Dude, this guy could do anything and I'm in because I love him. And I thought he's a nice uh, difference or distraction in this cast of like different color skin, powers, abilities, weapons, ships, and then there's John Riley just kind of hanging out. Like I love that dude. I love that it's different, but I love that it fits at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like it's the same thing that I was saying with Yandu, where he's a character where it's like he grounds it because it's like, oh yeah, I know John C. Riley, I know a guy like that. It's like so it's like it grounds it because you've got all this other crazy stuff going on around him, but hey, it's John C. Riley.
Yeah, yeah, that's good stuff. Couple heavy hitters. Not that John Riley's not a heavy hitter, kids, but they got Glenn Close and Benicio del Toro. Glenn Close, of course, as Nova Prime, and Del Toro, of course, as the Collector. A role that I swear to God that it almost felt like they wrote for him, that it never existed in a comic, or it was just so one dimensional. They said, "Look, here's this. He's got weird hair. Just do what you can to make him interesting." And good God, he so does. Um,
Oh
he's
man,
awesome, man.
uh, when you look at clearly some of the stuff that they're riffing off of, like some of the Star Trek stuff and
Yeah,
just some of the stuff like the elaborate hammy characters from like some of those like older sci-fi movies and TV shows.
yeah.
um Man, he fits that tone just perfectly. He is just so over the top and just so outlandish with this character that he's playing. and it just works. All of his hand gestures, all of his over the top movements, it just works. Um, like whatever that thing he does is when he opens the pod and he sees Infinity Stone for the first time and he's like all giddy about it. It's just great.
Right.
Um, and Glenn Close is too. Glenn Close is just great in her role as well. She doesn't do a whole bunch here, but she's great at what she does.
It's so funny, man, how now in this day and age, they can get anybody. They can get absolutely anybody. Dude, if they got Pacino, I'm sorry. It would make headlines, but how many people would go, "They got Pacino?" I mean, come on, dude. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, I think it's entirely possible they get anybody they want if the pitch is right. And again, you're pitching this to Glenn Close, who is an award-winning actor, and you pitch this to her, and dude, the word "fun" is thrown in to every pitch that they do. It has to be. Yeah, not only that, Glenn, you'll have some fun. This will be cool. Like, that's got to appeal no matter what age you are. That's got to appeal to you at some point. I mean, yeah, the paycheck's awesome from Marvel, obviously.
Yeah, I mean,
You
yeah,
know,
a lot of these people getting to do this and getting to do something that their kid will like is probably
yes.
appealing too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We got to give a shout out or two here, and I'm going to completely destroy his name, which I tend to do, and I really don't mean to. Peter Serafinowicz, and I've completely butchered that. I can't pronounce it. Yeah, I have no idea. His first name is Peter. It's Garth and Saul, which is also Novacore. He was the one that said, "What a bunch of a-holes."
Yes,
He's great. He was in Shaun of the Dead. Awesome in that film. And also, I didn't know this. He was the voice of Darth Maul in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
I didn't know that either.
Crazy.
But yeah, he's another really good straight man in this movie, full of
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of wacky, over the top characters.
Mm-hmm. Greg Henry, who plays Peter's grandfather. And the reason I remembered that guy was because he was in Payback with Mel Gibson when he played the shady criminal that was sleeping with Gibson's wife. And he's just the guy you just want to see him get killed because he's such a scumbag. And he tends to play that character quite a bit, I think.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin apparently did not get credited for being Thanos in this. And here's another tidbit I didn't know. He not only did the voice, but took performance capture as well, taking the role from Damian Portier, Damian Portier. I had no idea someone else had done it first. But apparently someone else had. And along those same lines, Sean Gunn stood in for Thanos during filming and portrays Kraglin Oblanteri, which I won't apologize for butchering because it's not a real name. But, James Gunn puts his brother in like everything he does, kind of like Sam Raimi does as well. So, but again, he was very country as well, next to Yondu, just kind of a hillbilly pirate. So,
yeah,
good stuff. There's your cast, kids, for the most part. A couple others here and there. Some notable moments from this movie, and we've talked about some. I think we set the tone for it when the movie opens. You get to see Peter's mom, and she's dying. And again, dude, we don't know the full backstory. We don't even know why he calls himself Star-Lord till the very end. And that hits home, and you're like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna cry again. This freaking movie." But she's dying of cancer. We don't know how she got cancer. We find out in part 2. And she tells him, "You look like your daddy. He's coming back to get you." And like, okay, because no one really knows what's going on. But of course, he runs out. Yondu shows up, and we don't know at the time, but Yondu has been sent with the Ravagers to take him to his father, who is Ego. And we see that in part 2. But we get the tone set for this after this happens because he's got the Walkman and he's got the music in his ears because his mom made him a mixtape. And dude, we've not even talked about the soundtrack. So you got to tell me, Phil, how much are you in love with 70s/80s soft rock from the AM station? Be honest. You love it, don't you?
Um, I love the soundtrack. I listened to the soundtrack a lot, like
It's
right when the
awesome.
movie first came out. I loved it. Um, Man, I remember when the movie first came out, and there was some heat that the movie got from parents because the opening is so dark and it's so sad. And some people were like, "Oh, that upset my kid," and I had to explain it that his mother was dying, and I had to explain it's like, yeah, but it's one of the big emotional beats of the movie, and I feel like a part of the movie that works so well is that it doesn't try to be it doesn't try to gloss over things. It doesn't try and sugarcoat it. Um, and I thought it was amazing at the time that people took their kids to see this movie and they were mad that they had to explain that, but not why the raccoon was cursing.
Right. Right. And contrary to what anybody said before Endgame happened, there is death in the MCU. There's death all the time in the MCU, and we see it all the time. How many innocent bystanders have been killed in the MCU since
Yeah.
Iron Man? You know what I mean?
Well, I think the thing that makes this different is it's not like, this is somebody that's like in some outlandish like gunfight or like some dog fight and they died, and you saw them die in a very cartoonish action movie-esque way. This is somebody dying of a very real disease, and this is like a very real thing that could happen to anyone. And I think having to explain that as a parent, I imagine, is difficult, but it's a part of Peter's story.
Yeah, yeah, you have to show it. I'm glad they didn't gloss over it. I think it needed to be painful, and I think it needed to be dark because you need to establish from the jump who this guy is.
I mean, this is why. I mean, oh man, it's like that's why I said that Steve that he is the heart and soul of this movie, because having him go through that, and as someone that lost a parent and um understanding what he was going through in that moment, because I couldn't imagine if I lost my mother at that age how I would have handled it. And
Right.
I was 19 when my mom died. um and so I understand, the whole scene of take my hand, and if I do that, then that makes it real. If I open
Right.
this gift she gave me, that makes it real and she's not coming back.
Right.
And so I understand that. And you know, again, that's why I say that the real mastery of this movie the the setup and the payoff. Setting up with that very, very dark scene, and then getting to the payoff of Gamora saying "Take my hand" and getting the flashback to it, and it has that emotional beat to it. It just works.
Yeah, it wouldn't have meant anything if he had just told the story rather than you seeing it.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, good
yes,
call. Um, I love how the beginning of this, after this, we see him going in to retrieve the orb. It has a very Raiders of the Lost Ark feel to it, which I love because he's kind of a goofball Indiana Jones if you think about it. I mean, he's kind of operating outside the law and he's taking things, but he's maybe not doing it for the right reason because he is a thief. But like his heart's in the right place, and you know, I don't know, but I love that feel. The dancing scene, which in for my money is iconic in the
yes.
MCU. I love it so freaking much. And my kid was, let's see, in 2014, my kid was 6. He loved this. And every time I played this, he had to get up and he would watch TV, watch the movie, and he would mimic the dance. And he's dancing around in my living room with his arms up like Peter and trying to groove to the song. It's the coolest thing ever. Uh,
Yeah.
it's great.
Again, I just feel like that's part of the magic of this movie, because it's like you could put all of this, intergalactic sci-fi stuff in front of people, and they might not digest it, but people will always remember Peter Quill, their introduction to Peter Quill dancing here, and some of the other stuff like Baby Groot and all the other things that makes this movie memorable.
Yeah. But Rhodey kind of ruined it for me in Endgame, if I'm being honest, because he's watching from a distance with Nebula, and he's like, "So he's an idiot." And she's like, "Yes," because when I saw this, it made me immediately think of Don Cheadle saying, "So he's an idiot." I'm like, "Crap! It ruined it."
I mean, yeah. I mean, and this happens several times when he goes and does through all that to go get the Walkman back, and he comes back and and Drax is like, "Oh my God, this guy's got spirit. He's gonna
Yeah,
make a great asset in this fight against Ronan. What did you go back for?" And he shows it to him. He's like, "He's an imbecile."
yeah. It's like people from a distance can see it, but he has no idea. He has no idea. That's great, man. One of the great lines from that scene in the beginning is when those guards keep poking him. He says, "Ninja Turtle, you better stop poking me." I cracked up over that again. That's so good. Because his frame of reference of planet Earth is all the way up until the time he was taken. And it's funny because he's got batteries for that Walkman. And there's things that they've taken from what they call Terra. There's things they've taken from Terra over the years, you can tell. But like, how closely connected is he to Earth anymore? Because he mentions Footloose and Kevin Bacon, which is awesome. And then I give it back to Endgame where it's like, who do you serve? What master do you serve? What master do I serve? What do you mean, like Jesus? All straight faced. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. The way that he uses his references and laces them throughout this thing are just hilarious, man. We're outlaws, or yeah. I come from a I come from a world full of outlaws, and just the guys that he mentions when he says outlaws are just
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. Like, because he mentions Kevin Bacon because he taught a town today. And what's funny is that no one around him knows that these are all nonsense references from movies. They have no clue who he's talking about.
Exactly, and that's what makes it even funnier because they're taking it like it's like some real folklore, and he's talking about some random movie or television show.
Yeah. 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 That's good stuff. We get the obligatory Stan Lee cameo, and it's perfect because he doesn't have to say much. Doesn't have to do anything. It's just Rocket's making fun of him from a distance. Look at Mr. Smiles over here. Where's your wife, old man? What a class A prevert. And he's just laughing hilariously because he looks like Stan's hitting on some girl, which is great. Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. Yeah, so again, the orb. How much did you know going into this? Like, did you know what was in the orb? Because, dude, I'm trying to go back in my head to 2014. Did we know an Infinity Stone was involved beforehand? Because I can't swear that I knew that.
I want to say that that's the first Infinity Stone that we saw. It is. I think it is because we didn't know the Tesseract was an Infinity Stone yet. We didn't know that the Mind Stone was in that other was in the scepter either.
Right.
Because
Right.
it doesn't Guardians of Galaxy come out before Age of Ultron?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Guardians was 2014.
Yeah.
Age of Ultron was
2013, maybe? I did think it was after Guardians, but I could be wrong.
I don't remember.
It's before. I think it's before. I think.
It's 2015.
Ah, well done.
So that's
So
the first Infinity Stone we see.
Wow. That's
But that
awesome.
goes again. That's just what Guardians of the Galaxy and how important it is to the Marvel universe because it introduced all of these concepts.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Yeah. I don't think people give this movie no credit with everything it establishes for sure. It lays the groundwork for several movies to come, man.
Yeah, because now that I'm thinking about it, Age of Ultron is the movie that that tells us that the the goo or whatever from Dark World is an Infinity Stone.
Which I still question making that a stone. I mean, I liked it was a swerve and maybe we didn't realize what it was supposed to have been. So I'll give it its due for that. I guess I'm just used to the traditional. Here's this stone. I hold it in my hand and I put it in a weapon. But I guess it's different. You know what I mean? So, um, let's see some other good parts of this because I'm going through my notes here. When they pick him up because basically Gamora's sent to get the Soul Stone. Well, we didn't know, again we didn't know, but it's the orb to get the orb from Peter. And of course, Riley's character bumps into him. He goes, "Well, if it is the Star Prince," and he's like, "Star Lord." Oh, sorry, Lord. Just the way he delivers that line is so good, like he's mocking him. And he said, "I picked this guy up a while back for petty theft. He's got a code name." He says, "Come on, man, it's an outlaw name." He's like, "Relax, pal. It's cool to have a code name. It's not that weird." So good.
Yeah, all of the stuff from those scenes and the chase to try and get to try and get the orb from Peter is just like you get so much in those scenes. You already get like the relationship between Rocket and Groot
Yep.
immediately. Like you already get their chemistry immediately. Then you get kind of an idea of just how Gamora is when she's like fighting Groot by herself, just like with a sword. Um, yeah, there's just so much good stuff they do there. Like when he comes back with with Peter in the bag, and he's in there struggling in the bag, and then he comes out of it. And he shoots him with a gun, like he's trying to hide inside the bag, like they don't know that he's in the bag.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's so ridiculous. Or Groot standing there with his arms chopped off, and he's sitting there kicking arms. He's like, "They're gonna grow back. Stop being a baby."
Yeah. Yeah, because man, she's hacking on him like a lumberjack taking down a tree.
Yeah, he's just standing there sad, nudging the arms with his feet.
Right, right.
Or um, him trying to escape and him thinking he got away and like wriggling his way out of the bag, and the whole time Rocket standing behind him loading this enormous gun, and then he's like, "Yeah, it's the little things in life." And he gets laid on the ground. There are a lot of taser scenes in this movie, and I feel like
Oh my
that's one of
God,
the
there
funniest
is.
ones.
Yeah. It's like I wonder what they call the taser in the MCU because I don't think it's ever referred to as anything. It's just they use it and they put you on the ground with it.
Yeah, there are a lot of scenes where somebody gets tased. That's one of the funniest ones because he's just like, and Rocket's just like, "Oh yeah, the good
Yeah.
thing."
It's all in preparation for part two when we get to meet Taserface. It's all in
Yeah, but
preparation.
that's why I'm like comedic timing. The timing in this movie is just on point every time.
Yeah.
There's so many lines that they're delivered, and then it's not even the line itself. It's just how somebody else reacted to it afterwards that
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
it even funnier.
Yeah, a lot you're right. A lot of times it's not the joke, it's how the other guy reacts to the joke that makes it funny. It's like Abbott and Costello. Like Costello can be as hilarious as he wants to be, and he's funny, but unless Abbott's standing there no selling it, that's part of the gig. Is like, okay, that's the other guy's not even it's like he's not even in on the act. He's just being straight. That's awesome. Um the kiln. So is the kiln the best prison we've seen in the MCU? What do you think?
Um, it's definitely the best prison scene. The prison break stuff is gold. Um, the stuff like them getting there and setting up that everyone there already hates Gamora, and she just goes and sits in her cell and is just like
Yeah.
whatever. Uh, and it just immediately cuts back to Quill laying on the ground with all of these prisoners around him, like it's like some huge orgy.
Yeah, they're all
Hilarious.
like hugged up and sleeping. It's so weird. It's like, don't you people have your own cots? What's going on here? Yeah, I guess we refer to this as Gen Pop because they just stick them in there with the rest of the criminals. And you have to know that putting Gamora in there, like you said, they're throwing stuff at him from the catwalk. And like at first, I guess Peter has this look like, well, they're throwing stuff at me. Well, they don't know who you are. They know who she is.
Yeah,
But he's got a point because Rocket says, basically it's because of Thanos and her that a lot of the people in the prison that people they know and love are dead because of her. So now she's having an answer for her part and all that stuff.
yeah. Um,
Crazy.
yeah, but again, there's just so much stuff there. I mean, I feel like the prison scene, um, is where we really get the idea of just how great Rocket is as a character, because you get so many things about him in the prison scene.
Yeah.
You a get his Napoleon complex and just how he walks around and he's smaller than everybody else, but he demands respect. And it's not like he demands respect and it's like, oh, this guy. He demands respect and he's gonna get it because he has muscle.
Right.
And so he comes in there and it's basically like the biggest guy in the yard tries to pick on Star Lord, and he's like, no, he's our booty.
Yeah, and like Groot puts his fingers up the guy's nose, and you're like, he's gonna get into his brain if he keeps going. Like
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. What is his line? His line is, if you want to get to him, you go through us, and
Yeah.
more specifically, we go through you.
Yeah. And then he lets him down, and Peter's like, I'm with them, which is good. Yeah, that again, a lot of sort of stereotypical sort of prison moments, but we get to meet Drax. And at first he's intense and he's a bad dude. And then it's not long into this that you realize he doesn't have any idea what humor or metaphor or anything that like it's so odd. Like, because at first he's a very threatening figure, like he's going to crush Gamora with his bare hands. And then, you know, all the stuff happens. Peter's like giving the slashing motion with his throat. He's like, why would I run my finger across his throat? Like, what? No, it's like this is you symbolized. This is universal for slashing a throat. You've seen it. The other inmate's like, yeah, yeah. And then Drax looks at him and he goes, no, no. It's just little stuff like that. It's so funny, man.
Again, the comedic timing of him going, I'm going to take this knife. And then just pauses for a second. That was my favorite knife.
Oh, that's great. That's right. Yeah, yeah. I'm taking this knife. Let's give Pratt some props because Pratt's jacked in this scene. Because of course, for the ladies, they got to take his shirt off. Like Hemsworth's got his shirt off in every freaking movie. I'm not threatened. I'm just saying, dude's ripped, and they got to hose him down. Even better for the ladies out there. So don't think that the MCU doesn't cater to the female fans, guys. If you think that, you're dead wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Man, yeah, I really love the prison scene. I love the plan to break out. But again, that's why I'm like the prison scenes are really Rocket's showcase, because you get an idea of just who he is as a character and his, like I said, his Napoleon complex. You get an idea of who he is as a tactician and a, kind of a mastermind. You get an idea of, what his skill set is. Not just that, he's a tinkerer, but you put a gun in this guy's hand, he's the most dangerous guy in the room.
Yep. Yep.
And when I look at the scene where he is like, I can't fight with all my stuff, and then the gun lands in his hand, he's like, oh yeah. It's just like, I don't know if you've ever seen Eddie Murphy talk about when he discovered makeup, right? He's like, man,
Ooh.
I was confident going on screen for some of these movies, but you put a little bit of foundation on me, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm the star of the show. And so I feel like that's that's Rocker. You get a gun in his hand, and he's like, we're cooking with gas now.
Well, he's got to bring something to the team. He's got to have a. He feels like the streetwise character who can boost the car if they need a ride. That's what he feels like in the gang. That he's, well, this guy can make it happen. You need something, he can make it happen. So like he definitely serves a purpose for the team.
Yeah, I just love that everybody else is walking in jail, and he's just like, I've broken out of tons of jails. We'll be out of here soon. I'm not worried about this.
22 prisons, he says, I think.
Yeah, he's not worried at all. Everybody else has their own problems. He's just like, yeah, I'll have us out of here in no time.
And he totally does. It's his idea and his plan, and everything works. It works eventually, but man, he gets them out. It's crazy.
That's why I was like, that's what makes Rocket Rocket. And I feel like the prison really, the prison scene really cements who he is for the rest of the movie and the next movie. I don't think that you can take Rocket serious without the prison break scene, because the prison break scene is like, hey, this guy's not just a talker. He's not walking around and just running his mouth. He can get things done.
And This is a joke that runs in a couple of different MCU films where he's giving him a list of stuff he needs. I need that guy's prosthetic leg, and turns out he didn't need it. He's like, "You really got the leg? I didn't need it." He's like, "I had to transfer him 30,000 credits for that."
Yeah, I feel like the at the end of the breakout, when his plan comes together, and Gamora's watching him work, and she's kind of the audience. She's like, "Oh no, he really knows what he's doing,"
That's good stuff.
and the plan just works expertly. It's just, and then after it's done, he just kind of he kind of just stands around with his hands up, like, "What? I told you I was going to get us out."
Right. Like, yeah, what was the problem? I told you it was going to be fine. Um, Again, going back to the Drax stuff, Peter calls him a walking thesaurus, and Drax says, "Don't ever call me a thesaurus." He's like, "It's just a metaphor, dude." Rocket says Drax's people are too literal. Metaphors are going to go over his head. And like you said, nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I would catch it. Man, it's so good. I love it.
I and again, I just think it's the timing and how he delivers them. I think the fact that nobody else responds, they're just like, "What?"
Yeah.
They just no sell about it. Oh,
Man, that's great stuff. Not long after this, we saw the so Yondu's weapon is called the Yaka arrow. I think it's how you pronounce it. Which in the comics it was a bit different. It was actually a quiver with a bow and arrow, I think.
yeah,
But in the movie, it's this, and this is much better because you can't do another Archer in the MCU. It just wouldn't work. Like
yeah.
Hawkeye's our Archer, you know.
You've got to do something to make him stand out in this cast where everybody else is using all of this great tech and all of this interesting looking weaponry. He can't be the guy running around with a bow and arrow
Right.
in space.
Right. Right. Let's see. We meet the collector here for the first time. We get to see Nowhere, which is one of the coolest sounding places I've ever heard. Nowhere is the severed head of a celestial being. No rules, no laws or regulations. Is the home of the collector. Um, they pass the time waiting for the collector by doing what essentially is alien cockfighting, which is, they're putting money down and betting on these little creatures, and Drax is getting all kinds of drunk. It's pretty funny.
I love the cut to the scene and just how excited he is about the fight. And he's just, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, but man, this is the first scene. Well, it's several scenes in the movie where you get the locales, and the locales are just handled so well. Nowhere just looks so cool. The colors around it. I mean, you even get that in the prison, just the contrast in colors, the whatever that stuff they spray Quill with, and it's just the bright orange. Um, I really think, other than the fact that this movie sets up so many things and it, does world bending, I think what makes this movie so memorable and so interesting is that it it just has its own style to it. It has its own color scheme to it. It has its own comedic takes to it. It just it just seems like it breaks a lot of the formula of Marvel movies.
Yeah. Like it's got enough there to make you know it's Marvel, but it's not like it's force feeding the Marvel stuff onto you because it's got so much story to tell by itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just think he being James Gunn just brought so much to this movie, and it doesn't feel formulaic in any way, and that's not to knock any of the other MCU movies, but that's why this one stands out because it feels like its own production.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. It could be independent of the Infinity Saga. I mean, they got the stone, but like if we never saw these characters again and the stone fell into the hands of Avengers on Earth, we'd probably be okay with that. And then we could just see the Guardians in another film down the road. But the fact that they assimilated them and assembled them all together in the same film is very cool. But you didn't necessarily need to do that because they can operate independently.
Yeah,
Um, what about Gamora? So we've talked a little bit about all the characters, but her character arc in this movie is pretty great because at first, yeah, she's a bad guy and it looks like she's in with her dad and she's in with Ronan. But the truth is she's wanting to get away from all this. She can't stand it anymore. Like she's got humanity that Nebula does not have. and that's serving her well, but it's also her downfall because she can't just be a killer anymore. She wants to get away from this madness. And one of the things that we kind of get is that when they see the power of the soul stone, the orb opens up, the collector opens it up, it kills one of his slaves just by touching it. And she's like, we have to get this thing to the Nova Corps. We have to. And Peter's thing is, nah, we need to sell it, make some cash. And it's like, it becomes obvious if Rona gets his hands on this, the galaxy's screwed. It's over. There'll be no part where you can hide because he's going to kill everything he gets his hands on because this thing has far reaching power. But this, to me, is one of the first moments we see her truly have a conscience about this and say, no, we got to do the right thing and essentially turn this over to the cops.
Yeah, she goes from being the, reluctant member of the team to the conscience of the team in that moment.
Yeah, good call. This is all leading to, again, kids, we didn't know really what was going on with Peter. But through another massive chase, we get to see Ronan. Drax actually made the call to get Ronan there to nowhere because he wants to face this guy and get, redemption and get vengeance for his wife and daughter being killed by this guy. But Ronan kind of takes him down fairly easily. But we get to this dogfight in space, and Gamora ends up blown out of her pod, and she won't last long out there. And Peter goes out there to save her, and somehow doesn't die. And at that moment, we kind of knew, wait a minute, this guy's an Earthling. How is he not dead right now? That kind of did that make you raise an eyebrow when you saw that? Did that make you think, they're planting the seeds, something big's happening here?
Man, that's just such a good scene. I think a lot has been made about Quill in Infinity War losing it on Thanos and quote unquote costing them that Infinity Stone and dooming the rest of the universe. I see a lot of people that's like everything that happened was Quill's fault because he messed up in that moment. But I feel like Quill's mess ups, all of his accidents and all of his weaknesses are all what make him a great character as well.
Yeah.
And they're all of his greatest strengths because the fact that he would jump out of his pod and be that reckless to try and save Gamora, that's what makes him a hero.
And everything's great until he decides to tell her that what he did was pretty brave. Like he has to be the one to point it out to her, which kind of reminds you, oh, this guy's a ham. This guy's a total ham.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, it's just the dichotomy of the fact that he would do something like that to save someone else. And then when he's back alive, he's like, yeah, I am pretty great, aren't I? It's like a kid's idea of Captain Kirk. That's what he reminds me of.
Well done. Yeah. Without mentioning Kirk's name, that's kind of what they were doing. You know what? I can totally see that. That's a good observation. One of the cool, I want to say cool moments, one of the moments makes you go, what? Was when Rocket goes back after Ronan's already split from nowhere, and Rocket goes back to pick up Drax and Groot. And basically, they've all seen what the Soul Stone can do. And Rocket's like, I'm ready to get out of here. We just need to run as far as we can. And Drax is upset. He's like, I admit I was wrong. He just wanted to get vengeance. And then Rocket mocks him and says, boo hoo, my wife and my child. And Groot's like, oh, how dare you? And he's like, everyone's got dead people. It's no excuse to make everyone else dead along the way. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of a really good line right there.
Rocket is possibly the best character in the movie. He just is. And that could be my bias because I was a big fan of Rocket coming into the movie and just seeing how great he's in the movie. I mean, he has so many quotables in this movie, and not just, quotables like that is like, oh yeah, he's right. Because he comes at things in a very tactical way. He comes at things in a very reasonable way, but at the same time, he's also very much out for himself. And so he's kind of looking at it like, no, you could have got all of us killed, including me. What are you doing?
Right.
And so, but the best line of that whole thing is of them deciding they have to go and save Quill, and them kind of dragging him into it reluctantly. And he's like, you're making me beat up grass.
Yeah, yeah. That's so good. Oh man, yeah. He's making me beat up Greg because he's kicking the ground. That's awesome. Um, so the Ravagers get a hold of him because Peter he doesn't basically, he tells Yondu, if you want me, here's my coordinates, come pick us up. Because he knows it's the only way to get him out of the situation. And of course, Yondu, it's a line that I didn't mention earlier, but it's a line that he delivers in the first of the movie when Peter gets the orb and decides not to take it back to the Ravagers. He's like, they wanted to eat you. These boys wanted to eat you. They never had terror before, and I saved your life. It's so great.
Again, setup and payoff. Him
Yes.
using that line earlier in the movie, and then we get Quill's reaction to it. It's like, that's not a normal thing. Why do you keep using that against me and throwing that in my face?
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, it's like you said, it's not normal. And he says, "You stole me from my family." That's great. But dude, is Yondu really going to kill Peter in this scene? Because he says he is. Is he going to go through with it?
No, I think that he is. I think he's trying to scare him enough into giving him the stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, in part two, again, I keep going to part two. He's got that great line in part two, and he says he may have been what is it? He may be my father, but he wasn't your daddy, boy. That's
But I
good
mean,
stuff.
a lot of this stuff in the scene is him coming off like a dad, and him
Yeah,
going like, "Man," it's very much like, "Man, I could have left you there. I could have not come and picked you up at all. You want to stay there? You want to go stay with your mother?" Like it's very much that kind of delivery to it. Like it's a very empty threat.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
don't know that at the time because you don't know their relationship, but that's very much what it is.
yeah. It's funny too because if we assume he's telling the truth and he's getting ready to kill Peter, Peter saves his own neck by saying that they've got a ringer, and if he kills me, he's like, if you kill me, you're going to blow this opportunity. And Gamora's looking at him, and it's maybe the first time these two connect on a level that says, okay, I don't know what you're doing, but I'll go along with it. And so because they go along with it, she goes along with it, they get out of there without getting killed. And then Yondu takes him back with open arms. They're all celebrating because the Ravagers are like all intense. But as soon as Yondu smiles, they're all happy and they're all drinking and hanging out. And it's like, then it's all of a sudden we're a big happy family again. It's cool because Rocket shows up. Drax is out there and he's threatening to blow the ship up. And when they finally get on the same ship, he says, Peter says, well, I've got a plan. He's like, how much of a plan? He's like, well, 12% of a plan. And that's when Rocket laughs and he goes, that's a fake laugh. And he goes, no, it's real. That's
It's
awesome.
real. It's the most authentic and hysterical laugh that I've ever given in my life because that is not a plan.
Peter gives this pep talk, which probably shouldn't have ended well at all. But he says, I look around, you know what I see? Losers. And you're like, that's great. What a way to kick it off. But his point is, we've all lost. We've all lost something. And life has given us a chance to give a crap. And I'm not going to stand by and watch innocent people get killed.
Yeah,
And Rocket
it's
says he's asking them to die by facing Ronan, which he totally is.
yes. Again, it's kid's version of Captain Kirk. He gives this very hammy, heartfelt speech, and the speech is really heartfelt and it's beautiful in a lot of ways. But then it's just the way he delivers it, is the way he turns his back on them,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
so dramatic with it. It's just so funny, and it's unintentionally funny. Um, it's like if you took it's like if you took Captain Kirk and Zach Brannigan, who I'm aware is a playoff of Captain Kirk, and merged them into the same character and put them through the lens of a kid.
Oh, that's a good call. That's a good
And
call.
and I mean it's all there, him sleeping with alien women, which is set up at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
It's all there, and so him giving this speech to them and thinking that this will, raise morale, and it does raise their morale because it's heartfelt. But at the same time, he says things that are basically insulting them at the same time.
Yeah, he is. He totally is.
it's just, it's who he is as a character, and that again, it's why he works so well. It's why he's the heart and soul of it, and I think just getting the goosebumps of him giving it when he actually starts getting more into the speech, and you can see that, there is real heart to the speech, and watching them stand up and like I still get goosebumps when I watch it of everybody standing up for him and going, I will go into battle with you. And then of course Rocket cuts the air immediately and
Yes.
stands up and goes, yeah, all right. And then gives the best line of the movie, in my opinion. All right. You happy now? I'm standing up. You happy now, guys? We're all standing up now. Bunch of jackasses standing in a circle.
It's great. So great. Because it's not lost on him how ridiculous this is. Like, we're all doing this stupid thing. We're all going to get killed. Great. Let's celebrate. That's awesome.
Um,
What's cool is that Peter goes over the plan. And of course, Rocket has to do that thing. I need one of the Ravager's eyes. I need that guy's eye. He's
yeah,
like, what? I need it.
man, best suit up montage in the entire MCU, by the
Oh,
way.
yeah.
With Cherry Bomb playing.
Yep.
It's awesome. But yeah, I mean, I just think the idea of them all being these misfits and runaways, and they all kind of get together under Cherry Bomb of all songs. It's just so
Yeah, it's weird.
it just works, and it just like them whole getting together. And again, another scene where I get goosebumps is when Quill turns the corner and walks down the hall, and they all start joining him one by one. It's just so cool, man. It's just such a great moment.
And it's that slow motion walk that we have to get. And it's like, it's so weird that like we got that in The Hangover and Bradley Cooper's in that and we get it here and he's kind of in this too. Except, of course, Rocket's adjusting his crotch with the suit on, which is perfect. So,
Adjusting his crotch with this enormous gun over his shoulders.
yeah.
Rocket is just the best, man.
Yeah, he's great. Let's see. So they get the message out to Xandar, and he's telling John C. Reilly's character that, Nova Prime, that the Guardians of the Galaxy are coming because Ronan is on the way. And basically, he's like, he delivers the line to Glenn Close, the message, something about that he's not totally a dick. And she's like, do you believe him? He's like, yeah. So the fact that he's bought into this is important because if he doesn't buy in, if he rejects that message, then they're not prepared when Ronan's forces get there.
Again, masterful comedic timing. Giving the message to her and just saying it all verbatim, and then she goes, do you believe that? And he goes, well, I don't know if I believe anybody's 100% a dick.
Yeah, right. Oh, I forgot that bit. It's great. Because he says it so matter of fact and so off the cuff. It's so funny. Have a product or a service that you want to get out into the world? Always wanted to try your hand at podcasting but don't know where to start? We've got you covered. Pod for Hire is a podcast production company that offers turnkey services to fit your needs. We produce your show from start to finish, allowing you the valuable time you require to focus on your established clients as well as prospective clients. We pride ourselves on delivering a top-notch product that will set your business apart from the rest and give your company the exposure it deserves. For more information, give us a call at 1-828-800-9880 or email us at info@podforhire.com. Pod for Hire. We take the work out of podcasting. We get another Kevin Bacon reference here eventually because the master plan is, kids, for Peter to fly his ship. And if we haven't mentioned how important the ship is, we should do that now. This ship is pretty important to him. We see it from the very, very beginning of the film to this point. But the idea is to blow a hole in the side of Ronan's ship. And I've got the name somewhere. And it's the Black Aster, I think is what it's called. Yeah, it's an awesome name for a ship. And once they blow a hole through it, they're going to fly the ship into it so they can take out Ronan. So they get in there and they land, and Drax is laughing again at the worst time. He's celebrating. He's like, yes. And Gamora says, we're just like Kevin Bacon, which is so great. Like,
Oh man, there's so many small fine beats in this thing. Them flying and they realize the Nova Corps is coming, and he goes, "He got my dick message."
yeah. Yeah. And he's like, prove me wrong. Yeah, that's
Oh
great.
man,
That's great.
there's so many great things about the final battle here. Again, I I just we've seen so many of these final battles in MCU movies, and this one just feels so unique. Their way of trying to stop the Black Aster from hitting the ground with all the Novas connecting and
Oh, yeah.
creating that big net to try and stop it. Their whole plan is just so interesting of trying to blow a hole in the ship, and then get in and distract. I just think the caper aspect of the movie also makes it so interesting because everything feels like a big scheme or a big
Like a
Ocean's
heist.
11 heist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, good call. Because that's what it is. Because we've got thieves in this who are like stabbing each other in the back, but they're all working toward getting the bag of money, essentially, getting the big diamond at the end of the film.
yeah,
Um, it's cool because when we get the scene when they finally get out of the craft and Drax is at his best, Batista when he's very soft spoken. He says, "I have friends like Peter. You are my friend." It's like, I appreciate that. And he's like, this big dumb tree. And then he looks at Gamora and says, "This green whore." And she's like, "Enough!" Like, it's so great.
again, I know that I've hammered this into the ground this entire episode, but setup and payoff. He was so good at it to do that line and to create that dynamic between them. And she says enough, and then Nebula comes in and just completely just tears her a new one, and he just like destroys her for it. Like, don't talk to my friend like that.
Yes. So great. Cause like she can no longer really dismiss him as being a blithering idiot because he had her back.
Yeah, I mean, just to punctuate him basically telling them how he felt about them, and he didn't even really get a chance to say it because she cut him off. But then he comes at the end to punctuate it by going, "Yeah, we're
Right.
friends."
Right. Um so the what Ronan refers to as the necrocraft. He orders them to do this whatever it was he calls the plan, but they start dive bombing the city of Xandar. They're dive bombing it. And it's funny because they're doing the typical running from trouble or running to trouble stuff. And they come around the corner. There's Korath, who calls Peter Star-Lord. And Peter's like, finally. It's so great. Just that moment is so great because he's totally vindicated for taking that name. Someone finally recognizes him by the name Star-Lord.
Yes.
Groot annihilates the soldiers. He's completely trashing them. Like, took out like 20 of them. And Drax gives Peter this big, dumb, goofy smile in the midst of it. And then when Groot lets him down, he turns around, looks at him like a big kid with his eyebrows raised, like, "Oh, look, I did a thing. I helped."
Yeah. Uh, again, setup and payoff. He set up earlier in the movie with him going, "Stop smiling. You're a professional." And he does it
Right.
in this moment, and it's just hilarious.
So good. What about the fight scene between Nebula and Gamora? What do you think about this, man?
Still, I think it's really good. I don't know if it's as good as their fight from the second movie because
Hmm.
it has more of the emotional beats in the second movie. Um, but in this movie, you get. I think it's a good. I think it's a good hand to hand fight. You get an idea of how much Nebula is willing to sacrifice to win and to kill Thanos because she hates him.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that is just also a very good character beat that she is loyal throughout the entire movie until he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to use the stone to kill Thanos." She was like, "Oh, you're killing Thanos? I'm on your side."
Right. Right. Of course. Yeah. I'll help you destroy. Was this? Help you destroy 1,000 worlds if it means getting back at him or killing him. Yeah. Yeah. Because she sees what kind of creature he is, what he's done to her as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it just fits again. When I was saying earlier that Yandu is an extension of the team. You know, in a lot of ways, Nebula is an extension of the Guardians too. She hasn't had her full face turn yet,
Right.
but she still is going through all this stuff. That everything is I'm out for self. And I know what he did to me. I don't care what he plans to do to the galaxy, but this man has tormented and tortured me my entire life. I want to kill him.
Right. Well, they all have more in common than they would like to admit, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, and I think that's why she fit as such a good member of the team later, is because she has a lot in common with all of the members of the team, the initial five.
Yeah. So they come face to face with Ronan, and Peter fires this weapon, which looks like, from a distance, it took him out. And Drax is like, "You did it!" And then the smoke clears, and Ronan's fine. And then, of course, because he's the heavy, he grabs Drax by the throat and says, "I was wrong. I do remember killing your family. Their screams were pitiful." But before he can finish the line, Rocket slams the ship into Ronan and Drax. Not for nothing, dude. Could have killed Drax, but I guess the point was I got to get in there and help. But it was
Mm.
awesome.
Yeah. Again, this guy is just a master of this, of just putting something on scene at one point and then coming back to it later and paying it off in such an amazing way. Um, when they first come in and they're all standing behind Quill, and the shot, the way that it scrolls across the ground and then revolves around, and then he shoots the bullet at Ronan, that looks so cool.
Yeah.
I just think the way that that scene is shot is just great. But the payoff in that is that um, Drax had to fight him alone earlier because he summoned him. He was like, I'm gonna get my revenge. I am gonna try and fight this entire army by myself. And then, of course, because Rocket was the one that told him off earlier, he was the one that saved him.
Very good point. Yeah, good callback. Everything works together for the greater good. That's good stuff. Um, Not long after this, we get the scene, of course, where Groot, the ship is coming down. The thing is going to land pretty hard. And so they're all kind of huddling together because they don't know what else to do. There's nowhere to run from this thing crashing. And Groot, like, protects them. He, like, grows himself around them. And Rocket's all emotional from it. He's like, you can't do this. You'll die. This will kill you. And then Groot, of course, says, "We are Groot." And as we know,
I
dude, what a
I
what a
was
moment,
gutted.
dude.
I was gutted. I was gutted. I was crying my eyes out at the scene.
Wow.
Just the way he delivered the line of "We are Groot," and that's
Yeah.
again, I have to give Vin his credit for delivering the line. And you only get 3 words, and the way you delivered it was just so well. And then you got to give Bradley Cooper his credit too. It's just such a great scene, and it just their character development from the first time we see them in a movie, and him being willing to sacrifice everything for his new friends. It just was great.
And because and also Rocket's still hanging on to the concept of I mean mine here because he's like, why are you doing this? In other words, why would you help? Why would you do this? Like, why are you doing this? It's almost like, you know what I mean? Like, even to that moment, Rocket's like, why are you even doing this crap? Just it's every man for himself.
I have a theory, and I hope I'm wrong about this, but I think that Rocket is going to sacrifice himself at some point. And the reason I think that is because he's had this moment of clarity 2 times in this
Mm,
movie.
yeah.
When Quill jumped out of his pod, he was like, "What are you doing? You're gonna die. You can't do this." Because he's a very logical guy. If if uh if my analogy of making Star Lord Kirk, then Rocket is Spock. He
Ooh.
thinks everything very logically. He's like, you can't do that. You're gonna kill yourself. You have to look out for yourself because that's what I would do.
Hmm.
And so he had that moment twice. He had that moment with Star Lord, and he had it with Groot. He had it again at the end of Guardians 2, when Yondu sacrificed himself, and you
Yep.
see him for the first time really, really emote and go, why did he do that? And because he saw a lot of himself in Yondu, I just foresee it coming that he's going to sacrifice himself, maybe in the third movie or eventually. He's going to have this big heroic moment because I feel like that has been his arc throughout the entire series.
Similar to Stark in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where when he finally gets it, he understands this is about a lot more than just me. And plus, Yondu, not for nothing, went through sort of the same arc where he sacrificed himself for Peter in part two.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's my theory. And especially I saw a report earlier this week where James did say that someone's going to die in the next movie. And I was like, oh, it's going to be Rocket, isn't it?
What? Like, don't tell me that. Don't tell me stuff. I don't want to know anything. Dude.
Yeah. And that's my theory. And there's several reasons to believe that. And I might be wrong. I think we all thought at one point that Hawkeye was going to sacrifice himself in the second Avengers movie, and that's what made Quicksilver's sacrifice even more powerful.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think him having this moment of clarity and finally doing something for the greater good is his story,
Right.
because he hasn't had that connection yet.
Very true. Very true. He's got it with Groot, but it's kind of the only thing he's got it with. Because yeah, he has to realize that look, these people don't really know who or what you are, but they're putting their lives on line for your sake, for the sake of the team, for the sake of the greater good. Like it's okay to accept help, and it's okay to do something when it's not entirely logical. So like, yeah, when he comes to that realization, is he going to be the one to fly the ship into another ship and kill them all and sacrifice himself? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many other things with Rocket that make me think that the fact that he survived the snap, um,
Yeah.
and he watched all of them die, um, the fact that because I mean, man, he was the sole surviving member of the team for whatever 4 years,
Wow. Yeah.
and it's other things like him, uh, connecting with other people like Thor, and man, it just makes me feel like it's inevitably gonna happen. Um, Man, but yeah, this scene, it just at the time when I first saw it, like it was the scene that definitely made me cry because it's like this is Groot, like, and this is the magic of this movie that they made you care about a tree. Um,
Yeah. No kidding.
uh, but yeah, and I mean, even afterwards, and Rocket immediately jumping to his feet and running without a gun. Again, it's just so many things that they do pay off here. When you go from the prison scene of him saying that I can't fight without my gun, he is running at a guy with an infinity stone with nothing because he killed Groot, and he's ready to just throw it away.
Right. Yeah, and another great scene of this movie is that's why I was laughing earlier because I'm reading my notes, but it's coming up. The ship crashes. Groot has a reaction because they see Ronan, and then you hear the music from the like the boom box is still playing, and it's the Ooh Child by the Five Stair Steps, who I don't think I could have named that band in my entire life until looking up notes for the soundtrack here because I've heard the song my whole life but didn't know who sang it. And then Peter is and Ronan is delivering this speech, and I'm going to do this. He goes, "Look, behold, you are guardians of the galaxy." And I'm like, I couldn't remember how they were named. He named them, which I didn't even remember for some weird reason. But he's like, "What fruits have they wrought?" And he's getting ready to blow the whole place, to hell. And then all of a sudden you hear this song and he stops talking to acknowledge Peter dancing. Like, it's the funniest thing in the world. Again, a deadpan. He's like, in very, very mild manner, it says, "What are you doing?" Like a human would. It's so freaking great, man.
Yeah, definitely one of the funniest scenes in the movie. It just again, it's just how well Peter Quill is the heart of this movie because he just jumps into this and starts dancing. He never says anything. He never says anything to any of the rest of the team. They just go along with what he's doing. The fact that soon as Rocket got knocked down and he realized he was next to the gun, he started rebuilding it, didn't
Yep.
say a word, and they
Yep.
just all started going along with the plan. Like
Because
there was no plan. They just started going along with it.
they're all starting to feed off of each other. They know what the other one's thinking, which is important. And the fact that Peter's standing there and he says, he looks at him and he says, listen to these words. Before he keeps singing, as if this next part means something wrong and you need to pay attention. It's
And
important.
bring it down hard.
Yeah.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Dance off, bro. Dance off, bro. Me and you.
I think just the move he starts doing when he does he said dance off makes it even funnier. It's just it's just his delivery, just everything about it is just hilarious, man.
And he throws it to Gamora and she shakes her head like, no. And he's like, all right, take it back. Very subtle. That's awesome.
Amazing. Just that scene is incredible. And I mean, just the fact that he did all of that and then he's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, he's ticked off at this point. I'm distracting you, Big Turd Blossom. And then he's like, oh crap. And he turns and Drax has got the weapon and aims for the Soul Stone, which is the best possible outcome because you can't take the guy down. We've established that. So he blew the Soul Stone out of Ronan's hammer, for lack of a better word. And here it is again, Phil, part 2 of the notion that Peter is not just a Terran. He grabs the stone and it does not kill him, which is crazy.
Well, it's the Power Stone, isn't it? Isn't the Purple Stone a Power Stone?
I thought it was the Soul Stone. Am I wrong?
The Soul Stone is the orange one. That's the one where they have to sacrifice themselves on whatever the other planet is with Red Skull on it to get it.
That's Vormir, I think, isn't it?
Vormir, that's right, because you have to give up a soul to get it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Soul Stone, I think. But man, God, again, if I'm sitting here saying that I cried during the Groot scene, but this scene and him reaching for the Power Stone without the pod to put it in, and knowing that it'll basically kill him, he didn't even think about it. He just ran and grabbed it. And granted, that's just what makes him. That's what makes him a hero. Everything that people threw on him and were mad at him for doing in other movies, that's what makes him him. He wouldn't have done that if he wasn't the character we already know. And for him to jump on it and know that it's going to basically kill him and he doesn't even think about it. And then you get, like I said earlier, the great payoff of Gamora saying, take my hand. And it pays off by going back to his mother, telling him to take her hand. And he finally just lets go. And it's a really emotional scene.
Yeah, that's great stuff, man. And you're right. Power Stone. It is the Power Stone. So there you go. It makes more sense now to me that the thing was so amazingly powerful to do the damage that it did. But yeah, dude, that scene where he's kind of coming apart and she's yelling for him to take her hand and he sees his mom. Good Lord. That ended me. That ended me pretty well in that moment. That was intense. But yeah, the whole team sort of makes physical contact and then Peter just lets go of this energy and Ronan's looking at him like he's in total shock. And he's like, but you're immortal. How? And he says, you said it yourself, bitch. We're the Guardians of the Galaxy. And then he kills him, which is good stuff. It's funny because... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I feel like the togetherness and the family that we feel for these guys, because they basically have nothing. And some of the sacrifices they make and some of the, just how much they did James Gunn did in one movie to make us care about these 5 people. I feel like he did more in one movie than they managed to do putting the Avengers together.
Interesting. Wow. That is a hot take, maybe.
Because we care about the Avengers, but I don't know if I ever emoted like that watching the first Avengers movie. It took them 2 movies to get us to that point. 2-3 movies to get us to that point.
Yeah, I can see that. I didn't get any of it from Age of Ultron. Maybe a smidge with the stuff with Natasha and Banner. Maybe.
I mean, and I don't want people to get this confused with, of course, like the excitement of, nothing beats that, revolving scene of the first time the Avengers are together. That's just, that's, top 5 movie moments ever. Um, but I mean, like, emotional investment. I feel like we're emotionally invested in this team really fast in just one movie. And I don't feel like we're as emotionally invested in the Avengers until way down the line. Like, there's so many connecting movies that take place to make that happen. And James Gunn kind of masterfully got us to care about this team in under 2 hours.
You think maybe part of that is the idea that all they had was 2 hours, where the long term plan for the Avengers was we're going to take time and build these relationships over the span of several movies first.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. But I think it just also goes to show just how strong of a script they had for Guardians, and just using Star Lord's um, storyline with his mother as the emotional through line of the movie, you know, does more to get us invested. And I mean, man, I mean everything with Groot and Rocket, and it's just so many moving parts. But like I said, you care about all these characters by the end of the movie.
Yeah, you totally do. You're feeling for all of them. Um, it's so funny because when this scene comes to an end, immediately comes to an end. There's Yondu wanting the orb. Did you realize that Peter did not hand him the correct orb when he did like a sort of sleight of hand behind his back? Did you get that he didn't give him the actual stone?
I got it as soon as he said, you can't open it right. I said, oh yeah, he didn't give it to him.
Ah, right, right. He's like, you seen what that thing can do.
And I think he even knew when he said, you can't open it right, and he looked and he pointed back at him and he started chuckling. I think he even knew.
Ah, good call. Because he does investigate it later. Yeah, that's funny. Um, so it's funny because again we see Yondu after this, and he's with Gunn's character, and he says Peter turned out okay. Probably good we didn't deliver him to his dad like we were hired to do. Yondu says, "Yeah, that guy was a jackass," and that's the last we hear of Peter's dad until part 2. Well, not the last, but the last from the Ravagers anyway. Um, so Peter tells Gamora, good thing I didn't get him the actual orb, and that Yondu was the only family he ever really had. And she says, no, he wasn't, which at this point, the Guardians are an actual team, which is good. And again, we go back to the scene of, Rocket is crying his eyes out because he believes Groot is dead. And Drax sits down and pets his head, which again, had this happened 30 minutes earlier, Rocket would have tried to kill him. But considering what's happening in the film, like he lets it happen because they're feeling this connection. And again, dude, that was
Yeah,
insanely good moment.
it all goes back to him giving him tough love earlier and telling
Yeah.
him, man, everybody has dead people.
Yeah.
And so in that moment where his friend died, he was like, I get it. It ain't about me. And he lost somebody. I'm here for him.
Yeah. Um, when we go back to Nova Prime and the Nova Corps, and they eventually, like when they picked Peter up the first time, something didn't register correctly, is what John C. Riley's character is telling him, and that Peter's told he's only half Terran, and she says that your father is something very ancient. And Gamora's like, well, that's probably why you're able to hold the stone as long as you did. Prime thanks them for their help and says that Riley has something to show them. And it's funny because as they're walking out, um, Gamora tells Drax that his wife and child shall rest well, knowing that he avenged them. He says, yes, but Ronan was just a puppet. It's Thanos he needs to kill. At that point, Gamora stops walking because it's like, yeah, you can't kill the big boss. That's a little different than killing one of his henchmen without saying it. That's what she's thinking. Like, I'm away from him, but yeah, you don't want none of that. And buddy, he sure didn't, because that moment came later. But another bit of foreshadowing, man. That's something else this movie does extremely well, is foreshadows a lot of stuff that's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought they did a good job in these scenes of, setting up the sequel, and then also, just wrapping up the movie. Um, Wrapping up the stuff like the John C. Riley's character had a
Oh
family
man, that's good.
and all that stuff. Yeah, the montage with Ain't No Mountain High Enough is
Yeah.
just so good. Uh Yeah, music just plays such an important part of this movie.
Yeah, and like they salvaged Peter's ship, put it back together, and it looks brand new to me. And Peter, man, again, Chris Pratt looks at him and gives him the very sincere thank you. Like, as it to say, wow, dude, that is so cool of you to do that for us. And then Riley, because he's just a regular guy in this movie, looks at him and says, I have a family and they're alive because of you. Like, that's what a great line. It's so simple. And he's not emotional at all when he says it, but he's so matter of fact. It's like, I know the deal. Without you guys, they'd be dead. So I have you to thank for it. Man, what a great line. What a great moment that is between those two guys. Good stuff. And it's funny because he tells them, your criminal records have been expunged, but I got to warn you guys against breaking any laws in the future. So finally we get some, some happiness toward the end of this thing because everything got really heavy. And Rocket's quizzing him as to whether or not he could take something from somebody as long as I want it more than they do. Like, well, no, that's a crime. No, you don't understand, sir. I actually want it more than they do. Like, cannot just take it. And then, of course, Drax says, what if someone does something irksome? Great word, by the way. What if somebody does something irksome and I decide to remove his spine? And he's like, that's actually murder, one of the worst crimes of all. He does that typical John C. Riley thing where he's like, well, it's kind of bad. You can't do that. Like, that's awesome, man. Great bit of
great,
comedy.
great comedic timing again because he says that, and then Drax is just like, and just walks away.
Yeah.
Doesn't answer. Doesn't say anything.
Doesn't pursue it at all. It's almost
Hmm.
like Drax's character never had the opportunity to ask a law enforcement official, what can I get away with? Is this okay to just kill someone? It's so awesome. Um, Peter says, oh, they'll be fine. I'm going to keep an eye on them. And he's like, you? Like, are you kidding? He's like, yeah, me. And of course, he opens the mixtape that he never opened, as you said earlier. Um, and reads the letter in which she calls him my little Star Lord. And it's freaking perfect. Everything you've been saying for the past hour about a payoff and about timing, dude. For me, that's the clincher. Like, why in the world would this grown man? I'm Star Lord. That's why he did it. It's perfect.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
really, really, really well done. I mean, just the fact that he waited that long to open it. I mean, really, the story there is that he just was not ready to let go. He wasn't ready to move on, and it took him all that time to move on. And in some ways, it took him all that time of, meeting and finding another family to grow up. He wasn't ready to do it yet.
Very true. So as you said before, Yondu opens it, the orb, and it's a troll, and he gets a good chuckle out of that because, like you said, I think he probably knew he figured Peter screwed him, but he was just going to let it go until he knew for sure, I guess. Nova Prime has the real Power Stone. She's got it secure, at least for now. Everything's fine, and we see Groot, what is later going to become Baby Groot, who's in a potter like a pot with soil in it. He's like stretching. So we know that the end is not Groot's not met his end. I don't know if we knew what to expect in the second film, but we know he's coming back. Um, and then another great line delivered at the end. What should we do next? Something good, something bad, or a bit of both? Gamora says, "We'll follow your lead, Star Lord." He says, "Bit of both." Of course, and then we get to hear the Jackson 5 as the ship takes off. So there you go. We get the headline, The Guardians of the Galaxy will return. And then, of course, Dancing Groot as Batista / Drax notices something's up but doesn't know. So he looks and Groot stops dancing. It's so awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Love it.
I remember how that hit at the time, and that was everywhere. That GIF of Baby Groot dancing,
Yes.
and I was like, that's how you do it. That's how you do it organically. You sell, Baby Groot dolls. You sell Baby Groot dancing plants,
Yep.
and it just worked. I mean, there's a reason why this movie is so memorable, and there's so many moments in this movie that stick out because it doesn't try to be anything but what it is.
And I've got a Dancing Groot plant, actually. It's awesome. It's huge. Because the local Toys R Us went out of business and everything was heavily discounted. And it's one of the items I picked up for a song. It was awesome. It's so cool. It's on my bookshelf right now. What do you think about the post-credits scene with Howard the Duck? Are you a Howard the Duck guy? Because you either are or you are not.
I'm not a Howard the Duck guy, but that says everything about what this movie tried to be. If everybody sat there and was like, okay, yeah, yeah, now we're gonna get how this connects to the other Marvel movies, and we're gonna get this cool cut, this cool after credit scene. No, it's just Howard the Duck. It's just another gag.
Because the dog wearing a spacesuit is like licking the collector. And he's like, "What do you let him lick you like that for? Gross." And then he drinks
Co-
his martini.
isn't the dog Cosmo?
I think so. Yeah.
And Cosmo is a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comic.
Well done. Yeah, exactly right. He drinks the martini. He's like, Burns going down. Like he's having this whole little conversation with himself because no one's really paying him any attention. There's this fascination with putting Howard the Duck in the MCU. Are we ever going to see him as like a fully fleshed out character at some point?
I wouldn't mind if he got like a short or like a Disney Plus show. But like a movie, I don't know if we need a movie. I think like just stuff like where he gets like maybe like a 15-minute short or even a show would be great.
Yeah. As unexpected as it possibly can be, because that's when it works the best. Because if you're
It,
expecting it, yeah, it's not as good.
isn't he one of the people that shows up in the portals and in
Yes,
Endgame?
they stuck him in there and didn't tell anybody. I don't know if anybody from Marvel told him until a fan saw it. It's like, look what I found. That's great. Wonder who he was fighting on the battlefield.
I love the idea of him just like running around and throwing his shoe at people or something.
Trying to sip a martini at the same time. Oh, well, kids, there you have it. There's Guardians of the Galaxy. If you haven't watched it again in a while, you probably feel like you just did. Uh, yeah, it's as I said at the beginning of this. I'm gonna stick to this forever and a day. This thing could have flopped for so many reasons, but everything worked together absolutely perfect. Just the right amount of heart, just the right amount of sci-fi. The story was great. There's so many aha moments in this movie. We're like, oh, I get it. Oh man, so good. So we've talked a lot about this movie, including the soundtrack, what it means to the MCU, and how great of a job they did with it. And dude, you have any thoughts on part three? Anything that you'd like to see in the third movie from this team? And is this going to be the last time we see Batista as Drax? He claims it is.
Yeah, it sounds like we're getting Batista back. I'm not sure if this is going to be the last one, if it's going to be a trilogy. Um, but it seems like we're definitely going to get more of Star Lord and Gamora's love story or unrequited story, love story. And we're going to get a whole movie of Star Lord playing off Thor, which is going to be fantastic.
I cannot wait for that. I mean, dude, is Hemsworth going to show everybody up in this movie, you think? Is he just going to steal every scene he's in? What do you think?
I man, just all of the stuff that they had back and forth in Endgame was funny enough, but I think a whole movie of that could be even more funny of him basically going to go, "This is my ship. I'm captain here," and Thor just kind of hanging around and being everything that he's supposed to be, like handsome and muscular and all these other things. Then he's just like, "No, no, no, this is my ship."
I got to be honest, man. It from everything I've read and everything I've heard, and plus Batista's been quick to point out, dude, I'm getting older. I'm only going to be able to look like this for so long, which he's got a point. But having said that, he's looked this good since his 20s. Um, I don't know. Like, I'd love to see him continue. We've often had conversations where we ask the question about recasting. You don't recast Drax, right? You can't do it.
No, I don't think you do.
I mean, we could see another member of his race, perhaps. That would be interesting.
Maybe he's going to be the one they kill off, and that's why he's saying that he's not coming back.
Ooh, ouch. Maybe. Oh man, dude. So not that I want to see that, but if we get that, do we get a split second of T'Challa on the astral plane with his father kind of moment where we can actually see his little girl running to embrace him because now he'll finally be reunited with him? Good, dude. That'd be heavy.
Yeah, I feel like if this is his last movie, they're gonna finally give him his own big heavy character arc because he hasn't had that yet. I think one of the big missed opportunities is he didn't really have a big showdown with Thanos. Um, and so I think at some point they've got to do something big with Drax.
Yeah. Give him a send off. Give him a fitting heroic end to the character. Give him something he deserves. I don't want to see it because I love the guy so much. And plus, dude, there's always a possibility you can't do this again if Drax is gone because it's the idea of like, it's kind of a weird comparison, but why did the show Friends work for so long? Because they all stayed together. If at any point any of the cast left, it wouldn't be the same show. We've seen multiple times over the years, not just with sitcoms, but with any kind of show. With one of the core cast leaves, it's not the same show. You can put whoever you want to put in it, but chances are it's not going to work. So, like, it's not the same Guardians without Drax, right?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It depends on how they handle this, and are they going to continue to make movies? I don't know.
It's tough for me. I don't know how I feel about it. I think it would depend on what the character is and what they're trying to do with it. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
hard.
I- I'm wondering who's going to be the next big bad for this thing, and I'm wondering like, because they still have so many things left open that they didn't go back to. Because I mean, they planted the seed for certain things in Guardians 2, and I don't know if they're going to go back to it. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, good call. You know, the cool part about this, we talked about this before with the Marvel Universe in general. The well is so deep, they can pull any obscure villain they want and make him important, or they can pull a big name and make him just as important. They can do basically anything they want to do and make it work, especially with James Gunn at the helm.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we shall see, kids, how this thing plays out. I'm anxious. I'm always anxious. I usually wrap up these shows anytime we cover Marvel to see, we'll wait and see what happens next. And I can't wait for it, which is totally true. So, Phil, hit me with it. Give me your last word on the Guardians of the Galaxy.
For my money, it's possibly one of my favorite MCU movies. I think it's going to go down as one of the most influential MCU movies as well, just for how much it changed trends. And I mean, the evidence is there because, DC clearly tried to take that formula and make it work with Suicide Squad, and it didn't work well enough until they just went right to the source and got the guy to get it right.
Yeah, when you can't get the Road Warriors, you make Demolition. Till you can get the Road Warriors, then you get the Road Warriors. It's kind of the same thing. So, yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all about it. I'm with you, dude. I love this movie. I think it's a massively great addition to the MCU. I'm so glad they did it. I'm so glad, in what is my opinion, rolled the dice. They probably didn't feel that way at all because, again, they were confident in their storytellers and their actors, and they should be because it turned out great. So I'm glad it worked. I'm glad part 2 worked. I can't wait to see what happens with part 3 because I'm in the bag for this stuff, as everyone knows. But yeah, this is going to be cool to see how everything unfolds. But watching this movie again, and folks, if you've never seen it, good Lord, you're doing life wrong. If you haven't seen it in a while, for God's sake, go back and watch it again. There'll be things that you missed or that you forgot, or maybe you didn't even know to begin with, but you'll pick up on it now. I promise you, it'll be awesome for you. And that's how we roll. And that is Guardians of the Galaxy. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.